So I talk to dead people. I act as the bridge between the land of the living and the land of the dead. I used to see family members and I would wave, I would talk to them. Witchcraft is about intention, it's about power, it's about your energy, and it's about more hands-on approach and doing. You know, there are dark magicians that I know of that practice with like lower dimensional, darker entities. I don't like the term evil, but are there malicious spirits and entities out there? Absolutely. There has been so many times where my clients have basically had an entity attach onto them that was of a darker vibration. She would do things like seance like rituals, and she didn't know what she was doing. Something found her that globbed onto her. It took her down a rabbit hole of really bad things. And there were so many occasions where clients would come into the shop and say, I need help. This is what I've done. How do I get rid of it?
There are people out there who are going to say, okay, she's messing with stuff she doesn't understand. She's a puppet for something else out there.
Yeah, it's the belief. As long as you believe it, it has power. And when it has the power, you can manifest and go forward with whatever you need to do with it, because it's that belief.
Hello and welcome to Beliefs Off Main Street. My name is Stephen. I'm a belief strategist, and this is a program where we interview somebody with an uncommon belief system, something that would be non-mainstream. And we do this not only to better understand people's belief systems, but also to find commonality. What is it that we share together? And I would like you to think about that as we now go to my interview with Freya Bishop.
And so I'm going to start with my first question, Freya. Do you believe that your belief system is off Main Street?
I would have to say yes.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about you.
So what I believe in and what my world represents is something that is out of the norm. I am a psychic medium. I am a death midwife. I'm a Reiki master teacher, and I'm a witch. So my world revolves around, energy, the dead, and helping people understand and gain insight in their lives.
Okay, so let's break those down a little bit.
Okay.
A witch, a psychic, a death midwife, a Reiki master. Is there one I'm forgetting there? Was there another one? Medium. Okay. So yeah. So let's start with, because let's start with witch. How did you get involved with witchcraft?
Okay, so this is going to be a loaded question. So just roll with me. So sure. And it goes into my interest with death. So it'll tie things together. I was an altar server back when I was a wee little girl. And
I'm sorry, you were a what?
An altar server.
Altar server. Okay.
Yeah, like in the Catholic Church. Like that's
okay.
How I grew up. And one of the masses that I specialized in, even as a little girl, was serving funerals. That was all I did as a kid. So every time I would serve a funeral, there's something about the atmosphere of a funeral, and this sounds so strange, but they always take the best incense out and they burn it during the funeral. And the presence of the funeral director, just the energy that just rises and just vibrates in the air, was something that just really, it got a hold of me. And there was something about dressing up in the vestments and just serving and just being in that space between like God and just the rest of the world. That was just amazing for me to have to experience that. So when I was a little girl, I began questioning what I believed in, because I loved communicating with spirits. I believed in lighting candles and just saying like a prayer of sorts, but just making my own prayers, my little spells. And I began really following like the Wiccan path when I was a little girl, just experiencing and just kind of rolling with it and allowing spirit in many ways to kind of teach and take me. And I just learned from there.
So you were somewhat captivated by the ceremony of this all going on, right? I mean, that was a huge attraction to you, was the candles, the incense, the wardrobes, and the ceremony of this,
And
right?
the energy that went with it. There was just something that just, it drew me in. And I grew up in a very Catholic family. So when I started looking into other avenues, of religion, witchcraft being the main one, my family was freaked out because that's not something that like we have in our family. But it grabbed a hold of me, and I've been
Now,
practicing.
how old were you? How old were you when these investigations were taking place and this contemplation was going on?
10.
10. Okay.
Yeah.
So just after communion, right?
Yeah,
Communion,
pretty
yeah.
much.
So, okay. So you said something there that I'm interested in, which will probably lead into the next thing. You said communicating with spirits.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by that?
So I talk to dead people.
Okay. Now, when did this start?
When I was a little girl, I used to see family members and I would wave, I would talk to them, I would have just talking to them. And my family would get really freaked out because they're just like, there's nobody there, Freya. Shh. And I'm like, no, there's someone right there. This is who they are. So when I was a little, again, being 10 and just really realizing that I could see them, they could see me, I began like a little quest in my own way to just discover, okay, what is this ability that I have? What does this mean? What could I do with it? How could I help people? And from there, it just grew and grew and grew. And it's a passion of mine. I love being able to not only help the dead, but to help the living, because as a medium and a death midwife in so many respects, I act as the bridge between the land of the living and the land of the dead. And in between this little bridge of sorts can be healing, transformation, comfort, peace. And it's such a rich balance and bridge to be in that space.
Okay, now I have a feeling, because that interests me so much, that I am going to so deep dive into that. But I want to get those other couple things answered first. Okay, so let's go now to a Reiki master.
Yes, I'm
now
a Reiki
explain
master
for those who
teacher.
don't understand what that is.
So Reiki is a healing modality that uses your energy in the form of like your hands to bring upon comfort, peace, and healing to your client. Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm not familiar with it. I've never participated in that, although I've done different alternative health modalities. So how does it compare to the massage, chiropractic, those that people might be more familiar with?
So for me, because it involves energy, it's like a hands-on approach. So like right now I can give myself Reiki just by, focusing my intention just to like calm my nerves. Not that I'm nervous, but you just kind of use your energy to just kind of channel through things and just kind of get things moving. I know in my past, I have done a lot of Reiki on the dying. That's kind of where my specialty goes, because it does bring comfort and helps relaxation. And it's said, like, if you were to get a Reiki session from a practitioner, you will leave feeling just rejuvenated and calm, because the practitioner is just removing just like blockages and just moving energy to get things just moving. And when I first started with being a Reiki practitioner, it was amazing just to hear like skeptic people just come and get treatments, because I love working with skeptics, because they were like, oh, I don't believe in this. And when they sit down and, you work on them, they would just wake up and their initial response was always, I feel so much lighter. I feel relaxed. And I'm like, good, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to just get the icky off of you and just move it through.
So this would be like heavy energy that's kind of weighing them down or blocking them in different parts of their
could,
body. Yeah. Now, can you feel this energy, or do you just go through kind of a ceremony of sorts with your hands and that this just naturally does it? Or can you actually feel where these blockages are?
I can feel where they are. Usually what I'll do is I'll do like a basic scan, like I'll get myself into an alpha-like state, almost like meditating, just to kind of put myself in this trance state. And then like I'll just kind of go and I'll like scan my client, and usually I'll be able to feel, because it'll be like this heavy energy that weighs my hand down. For me, that's the way it feels, and it's hot. So when I feel that, I know to kind of go back, and that's where I will start by just removing, and then I go through the rest of the session.
Okay, so now this ties in a little bit with what you were talking about before with seeing, being able to see spirits, and you're talking about energies and basically very subtle energies, right? So obviously I can't see dead people, so that's probably an energy of sorts, but it's probably much more subtle if it exists than I can see, and same with the body. Is this something when you started studying or practicing Reiki that you developed this touch, or have you always been kind of sensitive to this feeling, and that was just kind of something that naturally fit, like, oh yeah, I kind of understand what's going on there, and I'd like to go in that avenue?
I've always been sensitive to energy. In my previous employment, I was a daycare teacher. So whenever the children would become emotional, you know how kids are, they'll cry, they get afraid, they would always come to me, and I would always, like give them a hug or like rub their back. And I was the only one that was able to calm them down in such a way where they would be able to go run and play like nothing ever happened. So my coworkers, my farmer coworkers, would always joke that I had like the magic touch. And I was like, oh, no. And then when I found Reiki, I'm like, oh,
that makes
this
sense.
Is something to study. And that's what led me into studying Reiki.
Okay, let's go to psychic now. Now, this is a very interesting question I have. Because it seems to me, from just my experiences with it being presented to the world at large, that there's obviously different types of psychic abilities, right? There are people who can tell your future or predict or be able to tell your past. So explain to us what you mean by that you are psychic.
So for me, that's a loaded question, because depending on who you talk to, you're going to get different types of interpretation of that word, because it's like an umbrella term. Psychic kind of will spider web into all these different abilities and gifts. And I know for myself, when I say that I am psychic, I have a gift that I'm able to help people. First and foremost, I can help people with what I do. Whether that's doing, Reiki, talking to the dead, throwing down cards, channeling, I'm able to gain insight from past, present, future things. And that kind of will spider web, for me at least. And I'm able to help people. So I grant people like insight and guidance. And it's almost like a blueprint. I can see the blueprint of where someone needs to work on something and can help maneuver them and give them the tools and the insight needed to kind of rebuild and go forward.
Okay, good. So this kind of now leads me back to the death thing. And so I'm going to ask you, with regards to your belief system, tell me what your belief system is with regards to the afterlife. Yeah, no, yeah, it doesn't have to be like.
I love this. It makes you
in 15 words or less. Explain now.
I have been told different things from spirits, and I'm going to go upon what I know from my family. Okay.
Now you mean your family members of whom you've come in contact with?
Yes.
You're parted. Okay.
Yes. Because I know originally I had this mindset like, oh, the afterlife, it's you kind of move on to like the next phase and you just kind of go where your spirit is. And even as a medium, like I would always ask spirits that would come that I would help, like, what is your interpretation of this? Like, how do I tell a client where you are? So I was always interested in hearing how they would respond. For my family, they will say that they are able to go, and it's like a reunion. So they're able to see everyone that has passed on, but then it's almost like they can come back down, and it's almost like being outside of the building, like through a window, and they can still see us and try to communicate by knocking. That's what one family member says. They can still view us. So we're never really alone. We always have their energy and their presence around us. But that's how it was described to me from my family member. That they're
Okay.
able to kind of.
So first of all, let me step back. Now, when you say that they communicate this, how do they communicate it to you? Is it through a speaking as you and I are doing, or is it more of a mental telepathy? How do they communicate?
It's a combination of both. A family member, I'll cut to the chase, my father, for example. The way he would communicate with me is he would show me a giant table, and all of his family members and friends would be at this table. Now, this is a wicked big table, but he would say, that's what it is up there. For him, that's what it looks like. It's a giant table, and all of his friends have gathered around it. And it's almost like sitting there for Thanksgiving. And he is able to still kind of watch over our family and kind of go around as he pleases. So it's interesting, like hearing like my father's interpretation of the afterlife, because he was a very Catholic man, and that was his description of it for him.
How soon after he parted were you able to communicate with him?
It was about a day or two.
Okay. And as I've understood from what you said earlier or previously, that you would be talking to your family, saying they're in front of us. This is like full beta consciousness. This isn't like Twilight where you're sleeping, where you're communicating with them, or in these other states. It's like the Sixth Sense where the boy can see them right there, right? Okay. So is there any sense in your understanding and your beliefs of the afterlife that they come back and reincarnated, or do they continue on later? Was this their one go? What's going on there?
So again, this is what I believe. It could differ
Sure.
from other people. I think, and from what I have witnessed in my own practice and what I've seen, is a lot of spirit, will want to stay present and watch the family. So they'll stay very much here watching around. There is a point where if they feel like their unfinished business is done and they could rest, they will go forward and go where they have to really, really be. But a lot of times they'll want to stay behind and just make sure the family's taken care of. So
Okay.
That would be one interpretation that I would have about it.
So when you say that they can stay behind to kind of watch over the family, what does that necessarily mean? Are they able to affect things? Are they able to persuade us without us possibly knowing? I mean, for those of us who can't experience them and get advice from them, as you may be able to get direct advice, what does that involve? Or is it just them watching because they care for us and they just are just watching this play out?
So, and I have to bring up my dad again, just because like he's that type of guy. Whenever there's something going on, like he'll come, he's always like, yo. That's usually like how he'll greet me, yo. Like, okay, hi. And then he'll tell me like, you need to call my mom. There's something going on with my mom, who is my grandmother. You need to call my mom. You need to tell her to look after this. You need to tell her about this. So if I call her and I tell her like, can you tell me about this? And she'll, how do you know that? I don't know. Can you tell me about this? So he'll guide me in a little ways. Like he'll give me hints, like check up on this, ask about this. There are other times where he'll just kind of sit there and he's just like, you know what you're doing. I'm just here. I'm just looking after you. Hi, what you doing?
So what about those of us, I mean, I guess you don't obviously have direct experience with this, but perhaps through other people or other clients, how would, for instance, my grandfather, with nobody in the family that I know of that, claims to be able to experience him and get advice from him, how would he help our family?
So what I recommend to clients that will come to me is this. You want to acknowledge him. So I know, like in my ritual room, like over here, I have pictures of my family. So I always will leave like little offerings, whether it's like lighting a candle for them when I'm in the room and just saying a prayer, talking about them, just having like a picture present, because you bring forth that energy. So it's kind of like a direct line to who you want to communicate with. Other times, like if you have a pocket watch, put it by the picture and you just kind of reach out and you talk to them. I think of mediumship and just like trying to like, how can we get spirit to help us? It's like fishing. You have to cast your line to the spirit. And once you have them, you have to reel them in with like questions and just intention, like, hey, we need help with something. Could you help us? Do you know anything about this? And you just kind of keep reeling and reeling and reeling.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying that if we were open to the belief or the idea that they are around us,
Mm-hmm.
that if we were to ask for help, that we might hear a song, or they might subtly be able to respond to us in ways that we would then perceive like, wow, that seems like a sign. Is that correct?
It's prompting. Absolutely.
Prompting, and then they would deliver it to us in a way that we would then perhaps understand that that was the answer.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of people who are not, we're all psychic, and we all have a psychic ability within us, but it's accessing that ability. So I know for a lot of people, I will always say, drink some water, like get a glass of water, just kind of say a prayer, put an intention in it, drink half, put it on your nightstand, go to sleep. And spirit will try to communicate to you in your dreams, because it's just an easier way of accessing you, because we go through like day-to-day life just being focused and busy, and we're so here that we can't see what's around us. So
Sure.
when we're sleeping, it's like we let our guard down and we go into like this different state of consciousness where spirit can come in and just, you'll have dreams about them, you'll get impressions of them. So that's a good way of how that works. And you drink the water, and sometimes you can.
Okay, wait. I gotta ask you again about this water. What's up with the water? What do you mean what's the half a glass of water? What does that do?
So don't laugh. For me, that's how I began developing my practice. Like I would see spirit, and there were times where they necessarily wouldn't talk. So I would say, okay, I'll see you in my dreams. So even as a little girl, I'm like, I'll see you in my dreams. So I would always have a glass of water by my bed, and I would always fill it up, and I would always like hold it, and I would just, say like a little prayer, like, please let me see you tonight. I really want to like have a conversation with you. Please come into my dreams. And I would drink half and put it down and then go to sleep. And when I would wake up in the morning, I would drink the other half and take a shower. And there was something about doing that little ritual that would just prompt just different things. Like I would smell roses where there were no roses. I would smell a cigar where there's no one smoking a cigar. So that's kind of how things began to progress with me. So because I know that worked for me, I'm always like, hey, try the water trick, because I've done this, and this is how I was able to communicate and do this.
So would you say that the ritual of that is somewhat dependent upon your comfort or belief within that ritual, that for somebody else it might be read a page in a book, close the book, and then the next day read another page, whatever they feel is going to be the lubricant, so to speak, to open this portal, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be whatever, but it could be now, and I'm asking you if you believe this, that so for instance, water might not work for me, but some ritual in which I do give faith to would probably be more than maybe just water, because water might be very specific to you where it might not be for me. Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
So getting back to this idea of the afterlife, I'm interested in your belief about this life. What is this life? Why are we here?
To learn things that we haven't learned in our previous lives, because I believe in past lives. I do. I can remember a few of them that are not dreams in any way. So I feel like, we're here to learn things that we haven't figured out yet. And we have to figure them out to almost evolve and go to the next phase of our soul.
Okay. So you do believe in a creator, obviously, of some sort to have created all of this or created our souls, correct?
To a degree, yeah. To a degree.
Do you believe that that we are basically part of this that we ourselves are this creator as well, and in just different forms? Or do you believe that we are separate from this, and people would call it God or the universe or whatever it is? They usually see it as kind of outside of ourselves, where other people will believe that we're actually kind of manifestations of a deity, right? What is your belief on that?
I would like to think that we are extensions, like we're extensions of the gods. Like we are here to, I know with, being a witch, it's like, we're here to learn, we're here to serve. So I like to think we're an extension of that energy. And even like throughout ritual, it's an embodiment of that energy. Yeah.
No, that's good. So here's a question. Again, and I don't want to keep repeating the thing, your belief system, but that's what I'm looking for. So in your belief system, is this life, if you had to choose between one or the other, is this life about a purpose, like a mission, or is this life just about experience?
I think it's a blended marriage of the two, to be completely honest, because, we're living our lives, we're here to learn and experience, we're here to grow, and we're just here to I keep saying evolve, but we're just here to just be a more well-rounded individual, more well-rounded soul. And I like to think that that's why we're here, to just branch everything together, mold it, and here we are.
So our purpose is to grow or to develop our soul. So it is a purpose, right? And we do that through the various experiences. Would that be correct? Okay.
Yes. And I would like to think with, I'm sorry.
No, keep going.
With, having a purpose, it's what brings your soul joy? What do you love to do? And doing it, like someone who wants to help people, they could want to go into medicine, to be a doctor, to really help. And that's like their life purpose. It's to serve their community, to help people who need help, and be a voice of their community. So I feel as though we all have a life purpose. Like each and every one of us have it ingrained in us. Some people, I feel like through whatever happens, they can't necessarily find it, or they do. And for whatever reason, they're afraid to live that truth. For it could be like an insecurity or having doubt within themselves, but we all have a purpose. And I feel like once you find it, you have to grasp it and just do what it takes to just build yourself and live your true, authentic self.
And what happens if you can't, or you don't find that, or if you do and you don't pursue it out of fears or whatever other things may be limiting you?
I think at that point, because I know a few people like that, even spirit-wise, I would like to think, this is my belief, they may not have been able to do it here in this life, but in the next time when they come back, they'll have another opportunity. And they're going to have to learn, don't be afraid to take that shot. Don't be afraid to take that chance. Be confident with who you are. Speak your truth. Live what you need to do. Live your purpose. So I like to think that they'll get another shot at it. That's what I would like to think and believe.
Sure. Okay. So now how does this fold into Wiccan and witchcraft? And specifically what I guess I'm curious about is understanding your belief systems. And it's somewhat mainstream reincarnation, at least as far as of how you interpret it. But is that Freya or is that Wiccan? The idea of reincarnation and purpose and so forth.
I would say a mixture of both, because as witches, we believe, in our purpose, and going forward into our next life. I know a lot of witches that are friends of mine that we will just sit there, have like coffee talk, and we'll just sit there and just talk about like our past lives. Like, this was my adventure yesterday. And we'll just sit there and just jibber jab about just our experiences and like what we know, what we perceive, things, and yeah.
Okay, so is there a is does and am I correct? It's Wiccan, right? You would call yourselves practitioners of Wiccan, or are we just getting rid of that and saying witchcraft? Are those two different things, or?
Yes, so witchcraft for me, Wiccan is like a pagan practice, whereas witchcraft, I mean, it's a practice of itself, but witchcraft is about intention, it's about power, it's about your energy, and it's about more hands-on approach and doing, at least for me. A lot of different witches would have their different interpretations of it. So you're hearing mine.
So, okay, yeah. So obviously not speaking on behalf of all of witchdom, if that's a word. But so what you're saying is perhaps as Wiccan is more kind of a religious or a philosophy, yours is more of a practitioner.
Yes.
Is it more of a practical aspect to lead a better life or to experience this life the way that is optimal? Is that correct?
Somewhat, yes. Witchcraft for me, it's not something that I will like put on a shelf and just look at it. I'm constantly practicing my craft every day. Where if it's like taking a shower, just kind of allowing the water, for example, it's when I step into the shower, that's a ritual because I'm allowing the water to cleanse me. So I am envisioning, energy just kind of pooling off of me and just cleaning me, cleansing me, getting me refreshed for the day. And I'll always like follow it up with a prayer. So it's everything I do, I bring my craft into it. I don't believe in practicing it Monday through Friday and putting it away on Sunday because that's a no-no. I practice it every single day.
Now that's interesting because now I'm a little bit more interested in what does it mean to practice witchcraft? Because if you need to practice it every day. And when you say that your belief is somewhat off Main Street, to say that I'm almost like being in the moment, experiencing life, perhaps being grateful, gratitude, and then saying a prayer afterwards sounds completely, that could be any religion, it could be any person if they described it as such, right? But you call that witchcraft. So what component of that is witchcraft versus just a normal person taking a shower and understanding and being in the moment and being grateful?
Would you mind answering,
Rephrasing it?
Please.
I'm saying, okay, yeah, no problem. Because again, this is a very subtle question. So I'm saying if Jennifer next door takes a shower and just like absolutely appreciates it and is in the moment, feeling the water cleanse her body, expressing gratitude, and gets out of it and says, thank you, God, for this day. You know what, help me become the best person I can be. What distinguishes that from somebody who says, I'm practicing witchcraft? What is that very subtle sense of what does it mean to practice witchcraft as opposed to being in the moment, being alert, being appreciative, putting out good energy?
So for me, when I do like my little ritual of sorts, I have the different gods that I honor and who I give offerings to and who I will pray to in a sense and communicate with. So when I do anything, I will, in a sense, like call upon them to just, ask for their help, their intercession, and allow them to kind of just, communicate with me in that moment. Like for me, since I'm very water-based, I'll do a lot in the water because for me, that just feels, that makes sense for me. But with witchcraft, there's a lot of learning that someone would have to do. It's a practice, but there's more to it than that. It's like, you can't pick up this and just say, this is magic. It's a tool that you can use to do magic, and you have to study that and you learn it and you grow. And with your practice, it will evolve, which is pretty amazing, and it matures. there's a lot of people who start out studying witchcraft that they just learn, and it can be solitary. You can study with a coven, and it just kind of grows, and it's an amazing practice, and it's just amazing. For me, when I say it's my practice, it's my entire life. So I bring it in all aspects of my daily living and have it be that. Another thing for me is I'm always very mindful of what I say, of how I say it, of the tone in which I say things, because in witchcraft, we learn you want to be careful what you say, because it can literally go into the universe and it can happen. So being very mindful of what you say is also very important. So I incorporate that element into my daily living, and it just well rounds everything.
So what is if there's one amazing outcome of witchcraft as you're practicing, what is that?
For me, it's a deep sense of self. It's the empowerment that I feel of knowing myself and knowing my capabilities, and just being one, especially during ritual. For me, there's nothing better, more powerful than being in a ritual, because the energy is so intense, it's so rich, and it's just, for me, it's incredible.
So it's positively empowering.
Yes.
Okay. And so these rituals and practices that you do is to, I guess, to manifest that feeling and then use that feeling to do good. Is that correct?
Yeah, in ways, yeah.
To do good is, I know that's a pretty generic label.
I get you.
Unless there's something else to do, unless you want to perhaps correct that label with a specific word, so that those who are watching this can really understand, like, well, what are witches? What is their end goal?
That's a good question. For me, our end goal, I don't want to say to do good. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do want to do good, but it's empowerment is a word that comes to my mind. Empowerment. Connected. Being connected is another word. It's another one.
Does the connection empower you? Is it like the connection comes first and then that's what empowers you, or does the empowerment then foster connection? Is there some type of relationship there that we might be able to understand?
I would say for me, it's a connection. Once I can connect, I can allow that energy to just kind of grow, and it's a very empowering feeling when you can feel that energy and rise, and you can feel it within yourself. So when you do ritual, or when you pray, whatever you want to call it, there is an energy that you just feel that just rises up from you. And it's just an incredible feeling, and it's your own power, and you are manifesting. That's a word. That's a good word to use. You're manifesting this intention. That's another word to just, create magic.
So the recent, when I say recent, it must have been within the last 10 years or whatever, the book, The Secret, and the idea of law of attraction and manifesting, it seems like it's very hand in hand with what you're speaking of and what you're trying to practice as well.
To a degree, yes. More people would benefit from manifesting their energy and their intentions. When you think positive thoughts, all you have to gain is a positive outcome. Whereas if you are thinking negatively, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. It's going to be like a series of unfortunate events. Whereas if you are positive and have a positive disposition, and you just try to live your life finding the beauty and the joy in it every day, it'll just build, and it'll build up from there.
Sure. Oh, I understand that. Couple more questions here. I have to ask about spells.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm going to say. So just the general topic of spells,
Okay.
Misconceptions, perceptions, how you understand it, how you've been taught to understand it.
Okay. For me, spells are a witch's way of prayer. When we write a spell, we are putting our intention on a piece of paper, or we're just saying it into a candle as we're scrying it to just flow out of us. So that is our way of prayer in so many respects and in so many ways.
So, so the next question I was going to ask after spells was this, the idea, the connotation of darkness too, right? I watched a couple things online, and witches are saying that one of the first questions they get asked, are you a good witch or a bad witch? Like that, like the people who don't know them constantly ask that question. So obviously I can kind of extrapolate and figure out how this darkness came about, and juxtaposition with Christianity and their fear of the devil and so forth. But is there any aspect that you can manifest that somebody can use this not for good, but to empower themselves to do, to manipulate, to conquer, to do negative things?
So that's loaded because I don't want to say that there's such thing as good and bad, because that energy resides in all of us. When I think of dark magic, for myself, that's more of shadow work. So I see that as being the insecure, the doubtful part of myself that could come out. So usually if I have like a moment of insecurity, and this is just how I deal with it, how I take it, I'll spend some time working with my shadow self and figuring out like, okay, where is this coming from? And how do I heal in many ways that part of myself that's coming out? But I do know that there are different branches of magic that may be tinted a little bit more on the gray side, but it's what you do with it. That's the most important thing. Witches are not made, they're not supposed to be bad. They're not meant to be bad. It's the way you practice it. It's the way you go with it. It's like Harry Potter in many respects. It's like, you're given the tools and you're given the knowledge to learn and to grow with your practice. And it's up to you to take it where you want to go. And do I believe that there could be times where someone can veer off and study something a little bit more on the darker spectrum? Yeah, it's definitely possible. But I know, there are dark magicians that I know of that practice with like lower dimensional, darker entities that are good people. It's just wherever their practice evolves.
Ooh.
Your face. But that's true. It's like, that's what I've learned.
No. But there's so much I want to unpack in that. First of all, let's unpack this term, shadow. I think you said shadow self, right? Or shadow energy. What did you call it? That's something. Shadow work. Okay. So did you define that as, for instance, your shadow self would be that insecure self? It would be the lower energies, or is this shadow self something else that helps you overcome like insecurity? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like the essence of ourselves that, is doubtful, that is insecure. Like for me, that's what I call my shadow self. It's
okay. Okay.
Because we all have that.
So it is you. It's an integrated self that you're trying. Okay. Kind of Jung was, okay. Jungian on that. All right. So then you brought up, which then right before you said it made me think, okay, well, if you can communicate with other spirits, when you said something like good and bad, and do those, is that just a spectrum on like hot and cold, or is there evil, and is there what we refer to as good and evil? Is there a dichotomy existent in the framework of life and energy in the universe?
So
did you think I was going to give you light questions?
No, I love this. It's making me like stop and think. So I love this, and I hope I'm doing good. I'm like, this is great. I love this. Okay. So the way I will say it is like this. I think that's tough. That's tricky. I like this because you kind of like threw one at me. I think
Well,
it's
people
all
who are
about,
wary of you, people who don't trust you,
yeah.
there are people out there who are going to say, okay, she's messing with stuff she doesn't understand. She's
Mhm.
idol worshiping. So you're going to have those who are saying that she thinks she's doing good, but she doesn't. She's a puppet for something else out there.
Yeah.
And so there is this sense that for people who their belief system is, there's a definite dichotomy. There is good and evil. And they're listening to you. They want to know, do you believe in good and evil? Probably too.
That's very much like a Christian upbringing. Like that's one thing that I will take with me throughout my Catholic studies, even though I'm a witch. It's for myself, I believe that you can have a lower entity spirit that could be a prankster or a trickster, how, that type of energy. And I think it's all about what the practitioner, what the person is doing. Do I believe that there are some, I don't like the term evil, but are there malicious spirits and entities out there? Absolutely. And I know something that I have seen now. I'm kind of getting off topic, but I'm coming back to something. So I may bring something
Sure.
forth for you. There have been times when I will read a client and my client will be in a dark frame of mind. They will be insecure. They could be jealous of somebody. They can have a lot of anger residing within them, depressed. I think I said very insecure, but I'm just going to put that. And a lot of times they will seek out something that could help them. But when they do that, they're calling upon whatever can feed off their energy. There has been so many times where my clients have basically had an entity attach onto them that was of a darker vibration. And it's because if you're vibrating low, yeah, you can rise and try to get someone to help you that is of a good nature. But a lot of times you're going to find something that will take advantage of you, of your energy, and will kind of use you as a puppet. I've seen that happen a lot of times.
Can you give an example of that? Let's say, for instance, a
Okay.
client comes to you and they're, say they had just broken up, so they've got confidence issues, they're feeling down, they're really negative, and so I think what you're saying is that their energy is very low. And does this make them vulnerable, or is it just that how we were talking about law of attraction, that it attracts things that are vibrating that low too? What is it? Is it something else is like, oh, this is vulnerable, kind of predatory, or is it just like, oh, we're matching up?
I think it can go either way, and I'll explain that. So I had a client who was vulnerable. She was in a very vulnerable state. I would read for her a couple times a week, and I would always tell her, like, give up doing A, B, and C, find prayer, whatever you believe in, attempt to just find goodness, be positive, among other things. That's not the only thing I told her, but to the gist of it, and like what I would try to tell her was just change your life. You have to change your mentality. You have to change the way you're living your life, what you're putting into your body, what's affecting your body. Try to make a positive change. And that led her into a very dark road of practicing witchcraft. But the thing was this: she would do things like seance, like rituals, and she didn't know what she was doing at all. And when you do any type of like seance or working with a Ouija board, you need to know how to use the tools. And a lot of times people don't know how to use the tool. I don't know why I keep pointing at that, but you need to know the backstory and have reverence and respect for what it can do. So my particular client, she did like a seance like ceremony, And she ended up finding, or something found her that globbed onto her that she thought would help her with A, B, C, D, and E. And instead, it took her down a rabbit hole of really bad things. And she couldn't see that that's what was going on. Like, to other people around her, you could see that there was something going on. And, since, I'm a practicing witch, she would say she was a witch and people would like look, but she is different than you. So you are together, like you practice the same thing. And it's like, no, I don't. So there's a lot of like misconception when it comes to witchcraft, because people do assume we're evil. We do this, and this, and and it's not the case. Like, we are good-mannered, good people, and we want to help people.
So what is the purpose of this entity? I think you said to glom onto her. What does it get out of that experience of taking somebody through something that's unproductive? Or
It was manipulation, it was control, it was power, and she gave into this thing, and just it took over her life, and she went down a very spiraled downward road, and it took her a while to get better when she realized that this thing that she was praying to was not nice. Then she had to take steps to get better and just figure out what she could do to get rid of it. But sometimes when you're trying to communicate with spirit and when you're trying to work with them, especially if it's like a Ouija board setting, you're not going to get who you think you're going to get. If you think you're going to get Grandpa Joe coming from your spirit board, you're probably not. You'll get something.
So you are admitting that there are malevolent forces out there looking for ways to get in.
I have experienced that from working in Salem, because my background, like I would work in sales and I would, help clients and read clients. And there were so many occasions where clients would come into the shop and say, I need help. This is what I've done. How do I get rid of it? And it's like, what did you do? So there can be a lot of weird situations that happen, if that makes sense.
Sure. So this kind of, and we'll start kind of heading towards the end where we wrap up a little bit. This idea, again, this fascinates me. And I think it also, those who would be adverse to your belief system or counter your belief system do worry about these negative energies out there. They would call them evil spirits or jinns or whatever their terminology would be. And they would say that's why they wouldn't ever play with witchcraft, because what you're basically doing is asking for these problems. So taking that into effect, is there, in your experience, are we constantly susceptible to energies and spirits that we can't see? Or can we only invite them in? Kind of like the vampire inviting into the house type of Hollywood myth.
That's a little no, because it's definitely, it could be that. And I'll go a little bit further. It's the energy you invite into your space that can determine who and what can come in. It's about intention. And there was another thing that I wanted to say, and it just went right out. So I'm trying to get it to come back to me.
Well, I'm gonna pin you to this idea. Are we susceptible? I think you said, well, it's kind of like that. Are we susceptible, or do we have a protection around us that which we can't see really can't mess with us unless something like that happens?
Thank you. Okay, that's where I wanted to get at. I know for myself, I do a lot with like protection. So I put up a lot of wards around me, and I keep out things that can't get to me. So if I'm doing mediumship, for example, and I'm working with a client, I have enough protection around me that if Grandpa Joe wants to come forward, he'll be the only one that can come forward. Whereas if there's something lurking in the shadows like of my boundary, they're not going to penetrate because I work every day to strengthen and just build up my wall of protection. So
What is that? What is that wall of protection?
I do a lot of ritual. I will pray to Saint Michael. He is literally my protector, my guardian. I love him to pieces. And even from a Christian background, he is the great protector. So if anyone's ever afraid or they need help with something, battling anything, you can call upon him just by praying, invoking him into your space, and just really bringing him. And he'll be a form of protection for you. And there are other things that I'll do in ritual to just really protect myself and my boundary. When I say like my protection wall, it's almost like a shell of sorts. I'm in the middle, and then I have a big like circle around me that will keep me protected from anything that wants to try to take advantage of me or wants to try to come at me or take my energy or whatever the case is. So I'm always very protected, even wearing amulets, talismans. I always have them on me that are charged and blessed because they bump up more protection.
All right, here's another question. I'm going to go into to spirits and your death midwife. But what is it with white sage? What is that all about? That
I don't like it. I think it stinks. But
what's the history behind it and the reasoning behind it and so forth?
so from what I gather, it's definitely like a Native American practice, like smudging. And you're right, it has been something that has become very popular in the last decade or so, where people were like, oh, just sage it, because sage will get away negative energy and it'll clear a space. And it does work. It just smells really bad for me. It messes with my sinuses. But it does. I use different things. Like for me, frankincense and myrrh, I use that religiously because it'll clean anything out and it'll bring goodness back in. Even Copal using that too.
What is that though? I mean, obviously, I know if I were to be consulting and saying, okay, I would say, listen, Freya was raised as a Catholic, and so there's a very strong understanding or belief in olfactory sense, right? And so she's very captivated by sense in that. But there's a lot of people who are talking about sage in that. What is it about something that smells that is supposed to scare away spirits or cleanse? What is it about negative? Why isn't negative energy like the smell of something? That doesn't make sense to me necessarily.
I don't think it's necessarily the smell. I think it's what's behind it. Like different things that you use. So, okay, with clearing a house of energy, there are different tools that you can use that will get rid and disperse of negative energy, if you will. And one of them is sage, and it's just what it represents. It is a cleanser, but there are other things that you can use when you are cleaning a house. That's just like a little example. But it's for spirit, it's like the energy that you come into the space, what you're using, your tools, and that will kind of trickle and they'll move away.
Freya, here's a question that just popped to my head. You know how we were talking about with like the glass of water?
Yeah.
And it has basically an intention behind it, and you're using a tool similar to like writing your goals. When you manifest it on a piece of paper, it has a greater energy. Would you say that you could basically burn anything if your intention was that this was going to help cleanse this, and that was your intention, that was your ritual, and that's what you were bringing into the reality, that you could basically use whatever you wanted as long as it was your intention for that purpose and actually put out there for that reason?
Yes and no. I'm serious.
Like, no, I like it. No, yeah.
Like for me, it's, you want to do your research. Like if someone needed a house cleansing, do your research about, okay, well, what can you use for a house cleansing that will get rid of things and kind of clear out the space? I know people who will come in with just holy water and they'll just go throughout the space. And for them, it's that intention and it's that belief and the charging of that object, that it holds power, and that will be enough to send away. So it's energy, it's intention, it's your tools that you use.
It's belief.
And belief.
It's also, It's belief,
That's
right?
that's the core of it. It's the belief. As long as you believe it, it has power, and when it has the power, you can manifest and go forward with whatever you need to do with it because it's that belief.
You had mentioned, or when I read your biography, it had said that you have also been instrumental in helping, I guess, departed souls continue on, correct?
Mhm.
Tell me about that.
So, and what like, and I'll ask you to kind of go a little bit more into that. Do you want me to go into it with like a death midwife?
No, I want you to, we're going to go into that afterwards. What
Okay.
I want to know is if there's a departed soul, what is it needing a human being to do on the other side of the curtain? How does the living help the dead?
So, for me, a lot of times spirit wants to be heard. They have something that they want to get off their chest and they can't rest until they get this out. So a lot of times with clients, they'll come to me and they'll have something that they need to say or something that they need their family to do for them. And usually like when their family member can do what they need done, that'll put them more in a peaceful state. Now to transition them and put them where they need to go in a sense, that's I do that as well. And it's like crossing over, and it is very much like an energetic thing. And it's just, you guide them, you send them to where they need to go.
Now,
It's a lot.
are these ties to this world that it almost sounds like, if we were to use human vernacular, you're saying basically that they're upset about something, or they're feeling guilty about something, or remorseful or concerned about something, and so they're not wanting to continue on. Is this because of something they've done? Is it like they never asked for forgiveness, or they never told somebody they loved them, or is it one of these lost opportunities that usually keep them?
Absolutely. They just can't move on. It's an unrest. So once they find that peace, then they can rest. But absolutely, absolutely.
In your experience, what's the thing that keeps people or makes them most uneasy upon death?
Forgiveness. They feel like their family member has not forgiven them, and they carry that guilt, like they can't move forward because they have this guilt. It can also be they feel responsible to keep an eye and stay, but oftentimes it's like, no, we're okay, we're good. And by saying that to them, okay, and then they'll go where they have to go. I keep saying that, but they'll transition to their next place, if you will. um that's a lot of it too. And it's like that unfinished business. Oh, I need you to find the box underneath the bed. It has money in it that you need to give grandma. Go find it. And it's things like that.
It's like unkept. It's more like kind of, because that's kind of funny. It's kind of like an unkept promise, as more of a sense of like, I wronged a person and I never really apologized. I guess my question is, if you were to advise the living, like, look, this would be the thing that you want to do before you die, so
Yes.
that you don't have that. What would that advice be?
So usually when I'm working with the dying and I can see that there's tension with a family member, I will usually pull, the family member aside, and, I'll just say, how are you doing? And they'll usually tell me, oh, and I've had this so many times, I'm mad at this person because of something that happened 20 years ago, and I feel guilty and I'm holding all this aggression in. And it's usually where, and it's like, you have to tell them you have to let it go, because now this is the moment that they're going to need your forgiveness. They're going to need your peace, because when they find the peace and when you find it within yourself, it's forgiving. Once you can forgive, that bridge rebuilds itself, and it's just nothing but peace and love. And the dying need that, especially if it's about grudges and all of that heavy energy. That's not what you want to feel or deal with when you're dying, having that
Sure,
guilt.
sure.
I know with my brother, when my father was passing away, there were things that he had to get off his chest. And I kept telling my brother, I'm like, you're going to have to get it off your chest. You're going to have to just, he's not going to understand you, but you're going to have to say it. Like, now is the moment so you can find peace and hold your father to his, a standard, if you will, to love him and just support him and everything in that moment. And once my brother was able to say what he needed to say, like, we left the room, we gave my brother his space, he felt so much better and he was relaxed and he was like, okay, I feel better. Thank you. It's like, okay.
Now, just a question for me as I'm a father. Let's say
Yeah.
that I was at peace with dying, and
Mhm.
obviously maybe thinking it's going to be a wonderful adventure. And afterwards, could there be any sense that upon passing, that the people who are still here, say my children, who are so, I'm not saying that my children would necessarily be like this, but their pain of us leaving keeps us from moving on, as opposed to our regrets or our things, that it's just that we feel like we've hurt them so much, and so we kind of try to linger for them. Is that
Yes.
also a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I see it a lot where that will happen.
So then you have to deal with the living. You have to go to them
Yeah.
to let go, right? Okay. So explain this idea. You are the first person in my life to have the term death midwife. I think that is, it's so powerful. And again, as I told you, I've been thinking about death since I was very little. And so explain this concept and what you do. And obviously you offer this. And so what you offer people.
So, as a death midwife, my responsibility is to not only serve the dying, but to serve the living. And like I said at the beginning, I act as a bridge. I have a lot of knowledge. I know I have the tools that can help the living and the dying to find peace, to move on, and to find resolution. And oftentimes, when I'm working with a family, the dying may have wishes that they want to discuss, or they want to get something off their chest. And usually I'll facilitate that by saying, taking the family member that they're having issues with and just saying, how are you feeling about what's going on? Do you need any help? Do you want to talk about anything? And usually when you say something like that, do you want to talk? Are you okay? Do you want some tea? They'll open up, and I won't say anything. I'll just have them just tell me everything, how they're feeling. And usually it always comes down to I want to say I'm sorry, but I can't say it. I don't know how to say I'm sorry for the things that I've done to my family member. And sometimes they'll feel like because they're dying, that's not the space to even say that they're sorry. So when that happens, and that's pretty deep.
Like it's like not the time. I should have done it before. This isn't the time, right?
So it becomes this whole conversation of they need to hear that you forgive them. And when they hear that, that will not only make them feel better, but it'll make you feel better as well. There needs to be healing that happens. And when you forgive someone, even if it is on their deathbed, there is, they'll hug each other if they can, or they'll sit and pray, or you can just see with the family that there was more relaxation and peace. Even though they're grieving for their family member, it has to start somewhere. And I think so many times with families that I've worked with, it's forgiveness and it's allowing that to happen.
3 more questions.
You're good.
Do we die? And this is your belief.
Mm-hmm.
Do we die when we're supposed to? Like, is every death when it's supposed to happen, or can we die prematurely? If I get killed in a car accident, or if I'm murdered, was that supposed to happen? Is that how I was supposed to die? Or is that kind of not a fatalistic type?
This would rub people the wrong way. I don't think that. I think in so many instances, a lot of people die when they're not supposed to. I don't believe that, oh, this is when you're supposed to die. I don't believe that.
Okay.
I can't believe that, especially like again, with what I see, even dealing with like personal matters, like with my own family, I can't believe that, my father died the way he did because that's the way he was supposed to die. I don't believe that. I call bull.
Okay. So when you've encountered spirits, have some of them been that they linger around because they just can't believe they're dead, or that they didn't
Yes.
see it happening like this, or they're too young?
Yes. That
And so how do you get past that? If I died too young and I still had so many things I wanted to do and wanted to watch my kids get raised and grow old with my wife or whatever that might be, how do you convince that soul to move on?
it's a lot of hearing them talk. They'll often show me like images, like pictures, like sometimes like they'll tell me different things and they'll kind of paint like a story for me that I can just sit and meditate and just I can see what they're trying to tell me with like images. And a lot of times they just need someone to talk to. If I'm working with their family member and they're coming forth saying all of these things that are personal to that spirit, that's even better because I could really work with bridging. I love to use that word when you're dealing with life and death. It is a bridge to help facilitate that. And it is a powerful experience. If someone dies and they're not able to watch their family grow up or to see their first grandchild, that's a sad and a heavy thing when they waited their whole life for this moment. So oftentimes for me it's having the conversation with the family member and just saying, this is everything your father is telling you. He wants you to know everything I'm telling you, and kind of go and just say it. And that will usually give them peace because I'm saying everything that they needed to say that they could not say, and I'm saying it to the person that they needed. As long as that happens, I feel like they're not that they'll be okay, but there'll be more of a understanding. But when a person dies when they're not supposed to, it's a shock because I've experienced it with my own family, with two family members in my family, that they weren't supposed to go when they did. And that's a heavy that's heavy because they don't want to believe that they're dead. And a lot of times when I'm working with spirits, they don't want to believe that they're dead. They still want to think, oh, I can go to work, I can drive my car, I can go to my favorite coffee shop and get a coffee. Okay.
Now, do they realize that they really can't, or are they kind of like in the movie The Sixth Sense, where they really don't realize that they've died?
It's a denial. They can be very much in denial where they do not want to accept it. And like in the past, I've had spirits, because I've had a lot of encounters where they will try to live their life as they're dead, and then they would come back. I don't understand. I'm dead. How did I die? Why is this happening to me? And it opens up a whole other door of a conversation because they don't want to accept that their life is over and they won't be able to live anymore.
I would love to have these conversations that you're having with these souls. Okay, couple real quick questions. First of all, has your family completely embraced and welcomed you now as a witch? Do they accept that?
Yes. One of the most personal things that I have experienced was with my father as he was dying. He always knew I was an oddball, and he would always say, you're into weird stuff.
I think your father said weird shit, probably, right?
Among other things.
Okay.
And
okay.
It wasn't until he knew he was dying, and I can remember it was my birthday. It was around this time in 2018 that I went to see him where he was in a assisted living facility, and the way he felt, I knew that I could see it. There was something going on with him, and I sat on the bed. I'm like, hey, what's going on, Dad? How you doing? And he would just look at me and he's like, I'm dying. And I'm like, what? And he would tell me, he's like, I'm seeing things. I don't know what I'm seeing and I need help. Can you help me? And at that point, it was, my mom was in the room at the time. My boyfriend, who's now my husband, was in the room. And I'm like, what are you seeing? Tell me. And I held his hand. I'm like, talk to me. What are you seeing? And he would tell me, like, he would see a gate, he would see this big, ugly black dog that was guarding a box, and he would just stare at my father, and he would see things like people in the room with him, like his father, who he hasn't seen in like 20 something years. So I was his midwife going forward literally until he died. And whenever he had to talk about something, or if he needed to just confess something, we would talk, and we would have very long and lengthy conversations about just how he felt about his life ending, what he didn't accomplish, what he still wanted to do, which is the same thing, but for my father it was something completely different. But I knew how he felt as he was laying on his deathbed. Like, I knew everything that he wanted to say, everything he knew, like I knew everything, and I knew how to help him transition. And for my dad, there was a moment when, and this is pretty heavy, so I'm sorry. There was a moment when my father woke up and he was in and out of consciousness, like he wasn't there. And he would look at me, and he knew I was holding his hand because he was trying to just squeeze my hand. And I looked at him, and he just gave me this nod, almost to say, and the way I interpret it was, I love you, thank you. Because I walked this journey with him and held him as he died. And I remember our conversations, he would always say, thank you. You really do know what you're doing. You have a gift. I'm sorry for not accepting you as early as I should have.
Ah.
Yeah. And that was something that like was very heavy, because it's like, oh, wow, what do I do with this? But I would just say, Dad, I love you, and I'm able to help you. I'm able to use what I know to help you. So I know for me, that was a big and heavy moment that my dad, literally leading up to it, he accepted me, and I was able to help him find that peace that he needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you on that, huh?
Yeah.
And your mom's still alive? Your mom's still with you?
In ways, yeah. In ways.
No, I mean, she's still alive.
My biological mother is, like, that's a whole other conversation, but the woman who raised me, who I considered to be my mother, died. And
Oh, okay.
that was rough, because they both, my aunt, she was my aunt, but I saw her very much as my mother. My father and my mom died on the same day, 2 years apart.
Really?
Yeah, so August 20th is a heavy day for the family. So usually I'm always calling my grandmother, talking to her, sending her things. My brother will sit there and tell me, how he's feeling about certain things. And I literally act as the midwife in the family to just help resolve feelings and just be the witness to bear that emotion. And as a midwife, you get to witness these moments that they leave you speechless, because it is heavy. But with that heaviness, there is this beauty, and it's a rewarding experience to be in a place where you can help and serve. And I love doing what I do.
So it sounds to me, if I were to wrap up what you're advising, it's that everybody should say what needs to be said, try what they want to do in life, love as much as they can. Basically, the values that you're preaching as a witch are espoused all over this planet in manners disguised in other philosophies, right? I mean, basically, live your life to the best and fullest it can be, and try to leave no regrets.
Yeah, forgive when you have to forgive. Don't hold grudges. Just love as much and as hard as you can, and be a better person each day of your life. Just constantly just keep moving forward.
Okay. Last two questions. First of all, favorite witch movie of all time?
Ah.
I like the little witch laugh right there.
So I would have to say it's a cross between Practical Magic and Hocus Pocus.
Okay, now I'm not sure I'm familiar with Practical Magic. I do know Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus is just fun, just like silly Halloween fun witch, right?
Yeah.
So it's not offensive to you.
Hocus Pocus
No,
is
okay.
great.
Okay, and then Practical Magic. Okay, and then the final question. Freya, how would somebody, if they wanted to get in touch with you for Reiki, for learning more about witchcraft, or for death midwife, how would somebody get in touch with you?
So people who are interested in contacting me could do so on Instagram or on Facebook.
Okay. And also you have a little event coming up next year. You're presenting.
Yes.
Okay. So they'll have a chance to see you again. Tell them.
So I'm going to be a presenter at WitchCon. I am doing a presentation on being a death midwife, and it's called The Art of Dying with Dignity. So we're going to go all into deathbed etiquette and what a death midwife does, how we facilitate healing, and a whole bunch of other things.
Excellent. And I will also put up the URL for people so that they can actually see when that is and find out more about that. Did I miss any question that you would really like to talk about? Is there anything that I missed that you would really like to say?
No, you were wonderful. This was a lot of fun.
I really enjoyed this conversation. There's so many little rabbit holes I could have gone down deeper, but it was so broad too, so wide, so many things to cover. But really had a great time talking to you. Thank you so much, Freya. And you have a great night. And wait, one last question. When's your birthday? Because you said right around this time. My birthday is the 10th.
December 5th.
The 5th. Okay, excellent. Sagittarius.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything to me. So, all right. You have a great night. Thank you so much for doing this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a great night.
You too. Take care.